In the early 6th century, amidst the turbulent landscape of post-Roman Britain, a boy was born in the rugged kingdom of Rheged. His name was Urien, and he would grow to become one of the most powerful and legendary kings of the Old North, leading his people through an era of war and uncertainty. Urien of Rheged, born around 510-520 CE, would have been born into a society deeply influenced by the remnants of Roman Britain, yet evolving into a distinct post-Roman early medieval culture. At the time of Urien's birth, Britain was a fractured land, with the Roman legions having abandoned it a century earlier. The island was now divided among warring kingdoms like Rheged, Gododin and Strathclyde in the north, while the Anglo-Saxon tribes were pushing westward from regions like Northumbria and Mercia, seizing territory from the native Britons. This was a period of constant conflict, with battles such as those against the invading Saxons and internal strife among the Britons themselves. Urien would likely have been born in a fortified settlement or stronghold, possibly located on a hilltop or near a defensible position. Hill forts were common in the region during this time, offering protection and control over surrounding territories. As the son of King Sinfarch, Urien would likely have been born in a royal court known as a Ellis in Welsh. The Ellis would have been a complex of wooden buildings, including a large hall where the king would hold court, alongside smaller buildings for the royal family, storage and workshops. By the early 6th century, Christianity was spreading in the region, so the settlement may have had a small church or chapel. However, older pagan practices might still have been present, particularly in more remote areas. The presence of bards who preserved oral traditions and sang of the exploits of kings like Urien would have been common. Druids or other religious figures might still have held influence, particularly in spiritual or legal matters. His birth would have been marked by rituals in both pagan and Christian symbolism. Bards, who preserved oral traditions and celebrated the exploits of kings like Urien, would have sung of his destined greatness even as a newborn. Druids or other spiritual figures, still influential in spiritual and legal matters, would have performed sacred rites to protect and bless the infant king. These rites could have included washing him in a holy well believed to possess protective powers, invoking the ancient gods to guide and guard him. In early Irish literature, such as the Labor Gabála Érenn, the Book of Invasions, we find blessings and invocations that were part of the oral tradition and later recorded. Lug or Lug, a prominent figure in Irish mythology and a member of the Tuatha De Danann, was associated with kingship, skill and protection. He was revered as a warrior, a king, a master craftsman, and a saviour, embodying mastery in multiple disciplines, including the arts. Though not specifically a birth blessing, the invocations to Lug for guidance and protection resonate with the kind of blessing that might have been said at Urien's birth. Gwafa Lug ylaw hir I roi e oli uni a I feder ar I plentyn hwn, boed ido difu gyda nerth, your hawl a doethin a biser, wedi a wain gan law Owen Cadarn. While the bards sang of Urien's future greatness in the safety of Rheged's royal court, the world outside was far from secure. Beyond the borders of Rheged, a new and relentless threat was emerging, one that would soon engulf the entire land in conflict. From the east, the Anglian settlers were not just pressing into Brittonic lands, they were being led by warlords and kings, with one name standing out: Ida of Bernicia. Known as the Flame-Bearer, Ida had established a foothold in the north, founding the Kingdom of Bernicia. To him, the lands of Rheged were worth fighting for. Ida of Bernicia, known as the Flame-Bearer, was a figure of both legend and history. He emerged around 547 CE, carving out the Kingdom of Bernicia in what is now Northumberland. His epithet, the Flame-Bearer, evokes the image of a relentless warrior, spreading the fire of Anglo-Saxon conquest across the northern reaches of Britain. Ida is credited with establishing the first stronghold at Bamborough, originally known as Din Guaroy. According to legend, he seized the fortress from the Britons, fortifying it with a wooden stockade, later replaced by stone, setting the stage for its significance as the seat of power for Bernician kings. The story goes that Ida arrived with 12 sons, fierce warriors in their own right, who helped him expand his dominion. From this formidable base at Bamborough, Ida led his warriors in a series of campaigns against the Brittonic kingdoms, asserting control over lands once held by the native Britons. Under his leadership, Bernicia began to transform from a scattered settlement of Anglian tribes into a unified and powerful kingdom. He is often depicted as a king who brought both fire and order to the north, wielding both the sword and the torch to forge a new realm. While the details of his reign are lost in time, with much of his life blending into legend, Ida's legacy is clear. He laid the foundation for the dominance of the Anglo-Saxons in the north, setting the stage for future kings like his grandson Aethelfrith to continue his work. Aethelfrith, inheriting his grandfather's ambition and ruthlessness, would one day rise to power, expanding Bernicia's reach even further. But his path would not be unchallenged. In the rugged hills and fortified strongholds of Rheged, a formidable opponent was growing in strength, Urien, the son of Sinfarch, destined to become a legendary warrior king. As the two kingdoms edged closer to inevitable conflict, the stage was set for a clash that would echo through the ages. Aethelfrith, with the might of Bernicia behind him, would one day meet Urien on the battlefield, where the fate of the Old North would be decided in blood and fire. Sinfarch Oer, Urien's father, faced a relentless struggle to protect his kingdom. Though specific battles between Sinfarch and Ida of Bernicia are not recorded, it is plausible that they clashed as the rise of Ida marked the beginning of Bernicia's expansion into neighbouring territories. The battles would have been fierce, with each potential clash against Ida's forces pushing Rheged closer to the edge. The pressure on the kingdom grew as the Anglian influence spread, threatening the very survival of the Brittonic realms. Forging a king, a day in the life of young Urien. Morning, waking with the dawn, Urien awakens early as the first light of dawn filters through the narrow slit window of his chamber. The wooden shutters creak slightly as the wind outside picks up, carrying the crisp, earthy scent of the surrounding wilderness into his room. From outside, the sounds of the bustling court, the lowing of cattle, the clatter of hooves on stone, and the murmurs of servants preparing for the day blend with the distant rush of a nearby river and the rustling of ancient trees. The walls of his chamber are adorned with simple carvings of Celtic symbols, hinting at the ancient beliefs that still linger. Urien's bed, made of sturdy wood and covered with furs and woolen blankets, offers warmth against the cool morning air. As the son of the king, he sleeps in a small but well-furnished room within the Elais, the royal court's complex of timber buildings, perched on a defensible hilltop overlooking the misty valleys of Rheged. Morning rituals. After dressing in simple but finely woven woolen garments dyed in earthy tones, Urien steps into the Great Hall. The massive wooden beams overhead, darkened by years of smoke from the central hearth, give the hall a cosy yet imposing atmosphere. The smell of freshly baked bread and wood smoke fills the air. He joins his family and the court's retainers for a communal breakfast at the long wooden tables. The meal consists of hearty bread, sharp cheese and honey from the surrounding wildflowers such as heather, clover, meadowsweet and hawthorn, then washed down with ale or water drawn from the sacred well nearby. As they eat, his father, Sinfarch, speaks with his advisors. On the walls adorned with tapestries depicting the ancient battles such as the Battle of Mons Badonicus, Urien listens intently, absorbing the lessons of leadership and the responsibilities that await him. Prayer and instruction. The morning continues with a visit to the small chapel within the court's grounds. The chapel, built of stone and wood, is a place where the old and new beliefs meet. A simple wooden cross hangs above the altar, yet in the corners, offerings of herbs and carved stones suggest a continued reverence for the old gods. Urien kneels, offering a prayer to the Christian god, while also silently invoking Brigantia, the goddess of protection, for guidance and strength. The soft, diffuse light enters the small, narrow window, casting a gentle glow across the stone floor. The simple wooden cross above the altar and the ancient carvings on the walls add to the sense of sacredness in the quiet chapel. Afterward, Urien's tutor, a druid who has embraced the new faith but retains the wisdom of the old ways, guides him through lessons on the laws and customs of Rheged. He is introduced to the ancient teachings of the 3 concentric circles, a concept in Celtic and Druidic belief. These circles form the spiritual ideology that guides the lives of the people of Rheged and offers a deep insight into the journey of the soul through the cosmos. The innermost circle, known as Abred, represents the material world where life, death and reincarnation are part of an endless cycle. This is the realm where all beings must start, rooted in the tangible, earthy realities of existence. It's a place of growth through struggle, where the soul is shaped by the experiences and challenges of the physical world. Abred is the circle of necessity, where the soul learns the lessons of survival and endurance, experiencing both joy and suffering as it prepares for its ascent. Here, the soul is connected to the elements, earth, water, fire and air, each playing a role in the soul's development. The teachings of Abred remind Urien that every hardship faced in this life is an opportunity for the soul to grow stronger and more resilient. Moving outward, we encounter the circle of Gwynfyd. This middle circle symbolises the spiritual realm, a place of purity, enlightenment and moral integrity. Gwynfyd is where the soul begins to transcend the material plane, shedding the burdens of the physical world to embrace higher wisdom and insight. It's a realm bathed in ethereal light, where the soul gains clarity and understanding, drawing closer to the divine. In Gwynfyd, the soul is no longer bound by the struggles of Abred, but instead experiences the peace and joy of spiritual growth. Here, the soul communes with higher beings, ancestors, and the spirits of the natural world, learning the deeper mysteries of existence. The Circle of Gwynfyd teaches Urien the importance of striving for moral and spiritual purity, guiding his actions with wisdom and compassion as he prepares for his final journey. Finally, the outermost circle, Cugon, represents the infinite and the divine. This is the realm of ultimate unity, where the soul transcends all earthly and spiritual bounds and becomes one with the divine essence. Cugon is a place of boundless potential and limitless connection to the cosmos, the final destination for the soul on its journey through existence. In Cogant, the soul merges with the source of all creation, experiencing the purest form of being, an existence free from the cycles of life and death, time and space. The teachings of Cogant offer Urien a glimpse of the ultimate goal of all spiritual journeys, to return to the divine source from which all life originates, achieving perfect harmony with the universe. This concept of the 3 circles is not just a philosophical idea, but is embedded in the ancient lore of the Celts. It is beautifully reflected in the ancient poem Cad Gadú, or the Battle of the Trees, where the legendary bard Taliesin speaks of his transformations and experiences through various forms before reaching his enlightened state. Taliesin's journey through different shapes and existences echoes the soul's movement through Abred, Gwynfyd and Cogant, each phase a necessary step towards ultimate unity with the divine. Through the teachings of his druidic tutor, Urien comes to understand that the wisdom of these ancient circles is timeless, providing a spiritual map that not only guides his own development, but also the laws and customs of Rheged. Midday, combat training. As the sun rises higher across the courtyard, Urien heads to the training grounds. The training grounds where Urien practices his martial skills are a simple, functional space near the royal court, set within an open field surrounded by woods and rough terrain. Wooden dummies and archery targets are scattered across the area, where young warriors hone their combat techniques with practice swords, spears and shields. A marked combat ring serves as the focal point for sparring, overseen by seasoned warriors who offer guidance. Ancient trees and simple shelters provide shade and respite, while battle standards and carved stones remind the trainees of their heritage and the warriors who came before them. Lessons with the Bard. As the sun reaches its zenith, Urien takes a break from physical training and seeks out the court bard, a man with long flowing robes and a deep resonant voice. They sit near the edge of the hilltop, overlooking the vast expanse of Rheged's wild, untamed lands. The Bard, the legendary Taliesin himself, weaves tales of past kings, heroic battles, and the deeds of the gods. The rhythmic cadence of his voice and the ancient tunes played on a small harp transport Urien to a world of legend, the Battle of the Trees. I was in many shapes before I was released. I was a slender, enchanted sword. I was a drop in the air. I was the shining of stars. I was a word in a book. I was a book in the beginning. I was a light in a lantern. I was a harp string, a wizard's wand, a shield in battle, a sword in hand. Before I was created, I was in many forms. In the circle of Arbred I have been formed, and I have journeyed through 1,000,000 forms. Pure is my shape in the eternal circle, where I radiate 1,000-fold. The seed of 9 powers was I, enchanted in creation. These stories, carried on the wind, instill in him a deep sense of pride and purpose. The Bard's songs also carry moral lessons, teaching Urien about the virtues of courage, loyalty, and wisdom, values that will guide him as he grows into his role. Afternoon. Observing court proceedings. In the turbulent times of early medieval Britain, where the land was beset by threats from all directions, the power of a king was measured not only by his strength in battle, but by his wisdom in leadership. It was in such a context that Sinfarc, a ruler of the Britons, may have shared the story of Vortigern with the petitioners gathered in his great hall, including his young son, Urien. As petitioners from across the kingdom brought their concerns before him, Sinfarc, seated on a simple wooden throne carved with the symbols of his lineage, would have understood the gravity of the times. The usual matters of disputes and governance were overshadowed by the ever-present threat of the Anglo-Saxons encroaching on their lands. It was in this setting that Sinfarc might have chosen to recount the story of Vortigern, a tale laden with lessons for the present. Vortigern, whose name once meant Great King, had risen to power in the chaotic years following the departure of the Roman legions from Britain. With the island's defences weakened, Vortigern had to navigate a landscape fraught with danger. Known for his cunning, he consolidated his power by forging alliances and exerting force, eventually becoming one of the most powerful Brittonic kings of his time. However, Vortigern's reign is remembered less for his successes and more for a critical misjudgment that would haunt his legacy. Facing continuous assaults from the north by the Picts and Scots, Vortigern found himself in a desperate situation. The Picts, a confederation of tribes from what is now northern Scotland, were known for their fierce warrior culture and skill in guerrilla warfare. They lived beyond Adrian's wall, in the rugged and often inhospitable landscapes of northern Scotland. The Scots, originally from the kingdom of Dalriada, in what is now Northern Ireland and parts of western Scotland, were similarly formidable, frequently crossing the sea in swift boats known as currachs for their raids. These boats were typically constructed with a wooden frame covered in animal hides, often waterproofed with tar or pitch. The lightweight and sturdy design of currachs made them ideal for navigating the rough waters between Ireland, Scotland and the western coasts of Britain. Their speed and manoeuvrability allowed the Scots to launch swift surprise attacks on coastal Brittonic territories, making them a formidable force in these maritime raids. These raids were driven by a combination of necessity and opportunity. The harsh environments from which the Picts and Scots came were not conducive to large-scale agriculture, and the wealthier, more fertile lands to the south presented an attractive target. With the Romans gone, the sophisticated defensive structures, such as Hadrian's Wall, which had once kept these northern tribes at bay, were no longer maintained. The Britons, having relied heavily on Roman military support for centuries, found themselves suddenly vulnerable. There was little to stop these tribes from pushing southward, taking advantage of the chaos and instability that followed the collapse of Roman authority in Britain. Together, the Picts and Scots posed a relentless threat to Vortigern's kingdom. Their combined assaults put immense pressure on the Britons, who were struggling to maintain control over their territories in the face of these incursions. It was in this context of unceasing northern aggression, with his defences strained and his people weary, that Vortigern sought help from across the sea. Vortigern invited two Anglo-Saxon brothers, Hengist and Horsa, to Britain. Before arriving in Britain, Hengist and Horsa were chieftains of the Jutes, a Germanic tribe originating from the regions that are now Denmark and northern Germany. The Jutes, like other Germanic tribes, were seafaring people with a warrior culture. Life in these regions was marked by conflict and a need for strong leadership, qualities that Hengist and Horsa embodied. Hengist, the elder brother, was known for his strategic mind and leadership skills, while Horsa, his younger brother, was a respected warrior of strength and loyalty. In their homeland, the Jutes, along with other Germanic tribes such as the Saxons and Angles, faced pressures from overpopulation, resource scarcity, and the shifting power dynamics of the time. These tribes, including Hengist and Horsa's Jutes, were experiencing frequent internal conflicts over leadership, territory, and resources. Such power struggles often led to fragmentation and fierce competition among different chieftains. These tribes also faced growing pressure from external forces. The westward migration of other groups, like the Huns, created a ripple effect, pushing the Germanic tribes to seek new lands and opportunities. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire further contributed to this dynamic, as it left a power vacuum across Europe. Without a strong central authority to hold them back, these tribes were increasingly emboldened to expand into territories once controlled by Rome. For Hengist and Horsa, these factors would have made the prospect of new land and opportunities in Britain especially appealing. It was within this climate of shifting power dynamics, internal dispute, and economic need that Hengist and Horsa accepted Vortigern's invitation to Britain, a decision that would have lasting consequences for Britain. Their skills as leaders and warriors made them ideal candidates for the role Vortigern envisioned, to bolster Britain defences against the Picts and Scots. However, their arrival would soon lead to far more than just military assistance. In exchange for their military aid, Vortigern promised them land in Kent. Initially, this alliance appeared beneficial. The Saxons fought fiercely, repelling the invaders, and Vortigern, in gratitude, granted them further rewards, including the marriage of Hengist's daughter Rowena. Yet the alliance soon soured as the Saxons began to demand more land and power, seeing the weakness in the Britons' position. Vortigern found himself trapped, unable to satisfy both the Anglo-Saxons' demands and the growing anger of his own people. The culmination of this tension was the Night of the Long Knives, where Hengist betrayed Vortigern during a feast by having his warriors slaughter the unarmed Britons, an act that marked the beginning of Anglo-Saxon domination over parts of Britain. Sinfarch likely shared this story with his court, not merely as a historical recount, but as a stern warning. The lesson was clear. Vortigern's failure to anticipate the true intentions of his allies and his inability to unite his people against a common enemy led to his downfall. For the assembled nobles, warriors, and especially young Urien, this was more than just a tale from the past. It was a direct reflection of the challenges they faced in their own time. Vortigern became a figure of scorn, blamed for the disaster that had befallen his people. He fled west to Wales, where he tried to build a fortress on a hill. But every night, the walls would collapse, as if the land itself rejected him. It was there that a young boy, later known as Merlin, revealed the truth. the legend of the two dragons, one red representing the Britons and one white representing the Saxons, would have resonated deeply in Sinfark's court. This prophecy, revealed by the legendary figure Merlin, foretold the ongoing struggle between the Britons and the invaders. The red dragon, symbolising the Britons, was destined to triumph, but not during Vortigern's lifetime. By recounting the story of Vortigern, Sinfark would have been likely emphasising the importance of learning from past mistakes. He might have looked directly at his son Urien as he spoke, driving home the point that leadership required more than just strength. It required wisdom, vigilance, and a deep understanding of history. The Anglo-Saxons, like in Vortigern's time, were a present and growing threat, and it was up to leaders like Urien to avoid the pitfalls of the past. Reflection and learning. Before retiring for the night, Urien spends time in quiet reflection. He may speak with his father or mentor, discussing the events of the day and seeking their wisdom. These moments are crucial for Urien, as they allow him to process the lessons he has learned and to ask the questions that weigh on his young mind. His father might impart wisdom on how to balance strength with mercy, or the importance of maintaining alliances in a world where enemies lurk in the shadows. The quiet hum of the evening, punctuated by the distant howling of wolves, adds to the gravity of these conversations. Nightfall. As night descends and the stars begin to twinkle in the vast sky above, Urien returns to his chamber. The room is lit by a single candle. He lies down on his straw-filled mattress, pulling the woolen blankets up to his chin. His thoughts drift between the day's training and the ancient stories he has heard. The sounds of the night, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of the wind through the trees, lull him to sleep. In the silence, he feels the weight of his future, knowing that each day brings him closer to his destiny as King of Rheged, a leader who must protect his people from the darkness that threatens their land.